Hello everyone, nice to see you all here. East West Rail, we're not building Grand Central stations, okay, just to get that out there. But East West Rail, firstly I'm Martin Phillips, I'm Head of Customer Strategy at East West Rail. I've been with the company almost 4 years now. It's an absolutely fabulous programme, really exciting project. It's nice to see colleagues, friends in the audience here, as well as another couple of people I've come across over the years. So East West Rail, imagine, right, you're living in, I don't know, Birmingham, you're living in London. You work in biotech, you work in maybe Cambridge, and you're considering taking a job in Cambridge, but you can't find a house. You can't find somewhere to live near Cambridge. Property prices are too high. Connectivity across the Oxford to Cambridge arc region is really, really poor. So because housing isn't available, because connectivity isn't there, you don't take that job. And you take that job somewhere else. You take a job in America, because the Oxford to Cambridge region is working on a global basis. You know, the biotech that is in that area is global. You look at AstraZeneca and the likes, the vaccine example of Oxford and AstraZeneca. So connectivity is fundamental to help unlock economic growth. And connectivity is something really important that people make choices on, because it drives the availability of housing in an area. And in the Oxford to Cambridge region, that opportunity is depressed by the lack of connectivity. The opportunity is tens of billions of pounds per annum in that area. I think in some of the figures out there are like £98 billion per year. That's the opportunity for economic growth across that region. So the East West Rail programme is about economic growth. It's about providing connectivity to drive economic growth. And there's really good examples in the UK of where connectivity has created that economic growth. So Docklands was used as the Docklands connectivity was used as a good example earlier in one of the previous talks. We've got the Queen Elizabeth line that's recently opened, where people are actively moving to nodes along that connectivity. Borders Railway in Scotland has been a huge success in driving housing growth and economic growth in localities. So at East West Rail, we're building a whole system, and that includes stations. So we're considering the infrastructure, the rolling stock, and the stations. And we're going to talk a little bit more about stations today. But it's nice to see some of the things we've seen today, especially from Rosie, about the end-to-end journey. That's the basis we're considering it, door-to-door, the digital piece, the infrastructure piece, but really importantly, stations. So stations are part of a system that drive economic growth. But once you've got the station there, actually, what is it to the location? What's its context within the environment? And a couple of years ago, we started asking ourselves this question, what is a station's purpose? Is it there to just act as access into transport, or has it got a wider sense of place and purpose? And actually, once a station is in place, it actually contributes itself. It can contribute social value. It can contribute to sustainability by removing traffic from local roads, and it can drive local business benefits. So the East West Rail stations, we're considering on all those bases. So we ask CBRE to consider what a station's purpose is within its local environment. Because until you've really thought about its purpose, you can't start to design it. You can't think about what facilities are in it. You can't think about what kind of interchange to provide at that station. You've got to think really about what its purpose is. And we also asked CBRE to look around how stations can evolve. Because as Rosie said, you've got this thing, things are built, and then 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, 50 years later, trends have changed, policies have changed, customer needs have changed. And therefore, you're stuck with something that doesn't really suit the location or the context. So that was the piece of work we asked CBRE to help us with. It's one of quite a few pieces of work we've been considering over the last few years on stations and our whole system. But I'll hand you over to Madhu to talk about how you did that. And I'm going to sit down.
Thanks, Martin. I think you forgot your nice slides up there. But so I think this ties in well with kind of what Rosie said about the evolution of a station and the station within its kind of context. For this kind of CBRE, I guess why we were utilized is because we have look at kind of a wealth of data, and then myself, who sits in the strategic advisory team, we could looking at a station from a strategic perspective to maximize that economic, social, and environmental value. For this, we used 3 teams. So we used our consumer analytics team, who have proprietary technology that can look at kind of key stations, key journeys that people take using this data. So top left, you can see kind of quite common commuter links and commuter journeys. You can see how often a station is utilized with the bottom kind of left peak kind of station journeys. And again, that kind of fits in well with what you were saying, Rosie, about trying to kind of mix why people use stations at different times of the day. And then lastly, on the right-hand side, you can see we have access to consumer demographics using mobile GPS data. So people in the room should be a bit scared. We've got your data. So it was kind of looking at the demographics, not just of the station, but also the wider area within which it sits. And again, it's kind of linking, the key theme of today here, seeing the station as a place within a wider context of the community and the city. And then we utilized our planning and development team, who could look at this kind of emphasis of economic growth and looking at the importance of a station in enabling that and unlocking that. We talked about the Elizabeth line just now and as a good example of how stations can really impact an area. So our planning team looked at everything from the station, its kind of economic housing potential, and also the development typologies, everything from like a new settlement or a transformational type of growth. And lastly, the strategic advisory team, which is kind of more of your consulting type team. We looked at the qualitative, so what do customers in the future want? Especially post-COVID, we're a lot fussier. We're used to our comfortable homes and we don't want to get out and commute anymore. So it's about things such as, intermodality, making it convenient, give us some loyalty points for using the line. I'll ask you about that later, Martin. And then also around kind of, using technology, which is a key theme everyone's probably going to talk about today, to make that journey easy for us. And then, like you say, value just doesn't come from, financial value. It's about social value and environmental value. So how could we look at sustainability and that community element to kind of raise awareness to the station itself? So what we did was we looked across the whole line, end to end, and the potential stations, and came up with 4 key personas. And you can see we've treated the station itself as having a personality. There were 4 key personalities that we looked at. The ambassador, which is your kind of key destination station. What Rosie talked about with Grand Central could be a good example of an ambassador, or, our very own Birmingham New Street. Your connector, which is, as the name implies, your kind of station that helps connect people from A to B and onward journeys. And again, for that, you've got a different type of personality and a different type of commuter. A good example of that would be Clapham Junction in London. Your community hub, again, hopefully the name is quite self-explanatory, but this is your station in a smaller town or community. And again, that station would serve as an important infrastructure link and, has a good key kind of place within that community. And then lastly, your catalyst, which is, really defining the importance of how stations can catalyze growth within areas. Good examples of that would be some of the stations on the Elizabeth line, which have really transformed some of the areas, towards the outer zones of London. So what did we do with all these kind of personas? Well, we kind of created a one-pager, and this is just an example of a community hub. And the purpose of this is to kind of give it a mission and a vision, identify key characteristics, and then lean on global exemplars that give us kind of leading practice. And the point of this is so that, as stations evolve over time, you could use this as a catalogue and look back at what that station's meant to represent, and then try to challenge yourself as to whether the station's actually doing that. And this is kind of us putting it in kind of anger, or using it in anger, shall I say, a station example for one of the East West Rail stations. And this is your ambassador. So we've got a mission and a vision statement, which is quite different of kind of thinking about a train station. But we do really think that it's time to change the way we design stations and to kind of treat them almost as companies that have, a financial responsibility as well as an environmental and social kind of responsibility as well. So we then interlinked the data that I mentioned before about customer passengers' journeys, and looked at also, not just East West Rail, how that connects into wider train lines. And then the commercial and development potential, as I've mentioned. And then lastly, distinctive station features. So this is really making the station bespoke to the community that it sits within, reflecting the persona, in this case, of an ambassador. And lastly, using the station's personality to drive out that economic, environmental, and social value. In this case, we looked at bespoke kind of suggestions for East West Rail on how to maximize that community value, the environmental value, and even unique functions and amenities, and how, even from a design architecture perspective, that station reflects the wider environment with which it sits in. An example here we kind of said as a unique function and amenities, perhaps a cycle hire scheme, given the high academic community and also the large number of cyclists within that community. I'll pass back to Martin on how this was kind of taken further.
Thanks, Madhu. And I just want to clarify one point. We looked at the whole line because it is the East West Rail line. We know as East West Rail as a project, we don't have the ability to influence and inform all those stations, for instance, Bedford, Oxford and Cambridge. But for the stations we're building, it's really important to understand the stations around so that we're building the right thing in that area, because it is a whole system. So what have we done with this work so far? Well, importantly, it's actually informed part of our kind of our vision and our purpose as an organisation. It's informing our business case narrative. It's informing the engagement we're doing in already done in non-statutory consultation, but it will inform when we get to a statutory consultation what we're actually consulting on. In the meantime, we're using it, for example at local representative groups to give local councillors and parish councillors an idea of the way that we're thinking and the way that we're putting customers and people at the heart of what we do. It's already influencing the way we're thinking about the design for the development consent order, the planning process. It's helping us think about the way we're planning prelim design for stations going forward. It's allowing us to say to our sponsors and our funders, actually, the cost of a station may be the same or less than a traditional station, but the social value we can drive by looking at it this way can be much, much better. And we've done actually a case study at an existing station where we've proved, that we can improve the social value through a different way of design by hundreds of %. And this future ready thing is really, really important. We really want to influence design and all of the elements of consideration of the station in a way that they can evolve. So it's being used. It's not sitting on a shelf, and that's the really important thing. It's being used in multiple different ways. So thank you very much.
Thank you.